All right, ladies and gentlemen, our final experiment is going to be number 33, spectral identification of monoterpenes. This one's going to be really easy. We're going to apply what we found out and discovered and learned in our IR worksheets about how to determine the lambda max, where something would absorb a conjugated compound in a spectrum. So what you're going to do in the experiment, we're going to kind of modify the directions. The experiments were ways you could determine between compounds, but I just want you to practice and see in reality that these compounds do sort of, well, they do match pretty closely the calculations that we've made where they absorb. So really all we're going to do in the final experiment, show up Thursday, you're going to pick a compound. All the compounds that I have selected will absorb in the ultraviolet spectrum. You're going to sit down at your table. Um, while one of you is prepping the sample, the other person, or it really doesn't matter. It's not going to take you very long to do this. You're going to, excuse me, you're going to take a 1 microliter, that's 1/1,000,000th of a liter. You're going to dilute your sample in 50 milliliters of 95% ethyl alcohol. Then what you're going to do is put that in a cuvette, and you're going to put that into one of our two ultraviolet spectrometers. And the spectrometer will give you a reading of where the compounds are absorbing, or actually you will see a small spectrum of the compound. And when you see the spectrum of the compound, you will then go calculate by our methods where the lambda max should have been. You're going to make a comparison of them. That's going to be the entire report. You're just going to show me your calculation. You can ignore all the things in the experiment about uh, comparing it to other compounds and telling the difference between them. Really, all you need to do is this is your procedure. There's no pre-lab calculation. I guess if you want to call it a pre-lab calculation, once you get your I'd rather you not do it that way. Just in your data, show me your calculation of where you think your compound should have absorbed, and then get your reading from the spectrometer. And you may have to take a photo. I don't know if we're going to be able to hook these up to printers. You may have to take a photo of your spectrum. The only thing I can tell you about the spectrum is you may not get a specific, what do you want to say, a peak that comes out exactly. It may be over a broad region. And if that was the case, I would look for your answer. I would record all that broad region of the top of the peak. And then if yours comes out in that area, then, typically what I've done is sort of average where the peak starts and ends, and the average of the two I've called the lambda max. You don't have to do it that way. So really all we're going to do, dilute our sample. It has to be diluted extremely. As you can see, 1/1,000,000th of a liter. They're all liquids. They all dissolve in ethyl alcohol. And get its spectrum, compare the spectrum to the calculated lambda max. And I don't have the questions right now in front of me, so I can't tell you which questions to do, but that's going to be the entire experiment. Now, with that in mind, I want to talk about the final. We're going to have a lot of time left where if you want to bring those final exam review guides after we complete this, which should only take us maybe 25 minutes, you can do the calculations later. That means you'll have 2 reports because you'll have to do a melting point on your other material. That way, if you want to prep and be ready with questions that you have about the study guide, I can go through as much as I can. What I had planned on doing was having the final next week, turn in your final 2 reports. We don't really have to clean out our lab lockers. So, because they're in such disarray as they are, people getting into them. So, really, all we need to do is just show up next week during the regular class period time. We'll take final. I'll allot you 2 hours for that. If you want to hang around this Thursday and go over parts of it, you can. I'll spend some time there. If not, what I'll try to do is I'll try to make some more of these recordings and I'll go through the study guide. Make sure you eliminate any references in the study guide to thin layer chromatography. We did not do that experiment. It'll probably be our first experiment next semester. And those questions will not be on the final exam. So we have a super short lab. Somebody can be setting this one up and doing it while the other person's getting a melting point off from the previous lab. And then we can allot the rest of the time. There will be a final quiz. I'll have a quiz from the last time as well, since I forgot that folder. So we'll have 2 quizzes, a very short lab, a very short melting point from the previous lab, and we'll have the rest of the time to study for the final. And I'll prep some videos going over the final exam study guide as well. So that seems to be the plan, and I'll see you guys Thursday.